I'd like to call this meeting of the Westland City Council to order, please. Tonight we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Reaster Everett, Roy Wilson, and Clarence Love.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilwoman Green will be right down to talk to you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Councilwoman Tasha Green, and I have the pleasure of introducing a few people from our community that many of you know, and some of you will get to know a little bit more about tonight. These are three jewels from our community, long-term residents, and in honor of Black History Month, they led the pledge for us tonight. So I'm going to start by sharing some fun facts about them, their history here in the city, and present them with a certificate of honor on behalf of Westland City Council. So we will start with Mrs. Reaster Everett. So if I can switch places there. All right. So Mrs. Everett, believe it or not, was the youngest married couple to move to the historical part of Westland, which is Annapolis Park, as a United States Marine veteran family. She registered to vote at age 21 in 1955. Which was the legal age to vote in the country at that particular time. And since then, she has maintained a voting record of 90% or more since 1955 for all local, state, and federal elections. Mrs. Everett was a part of the civil rights movement under Dr. Martin Luther King. She has been married for 65 years. I never would have known that. She looks like she can be my sister. Mrs. Everett also performed the swearing-in ceremony for the very first African-American woman elected to Westland City Council, which is myself. So thanks again, Mrs. Everett. All right, next we have Mr. Clarence Love. Clarence Love is the former president of our Homeowners Association for Annapolis Park. He is a member of the Westland Park Committee. He's also the pastor of Transforming Church in Detroit, Michigan. He's a member of the Romulus Ministerial Alliance, and he's also a chaplain for Romulus Community Schools and the school board of, Detroit Public Schools as well. All right. And lastly, we have one of my absolute favorites from the community, Mr. Roy Wilson. And Mr. Wilson is not shy. Mr. Wilson is a veteran of the United States Army. He is the past president of the Inkster branch of the NAACP for 10 years and is still very active in the community. He has lived in Westland for more than 65 years, so before Westland actually became the city of Westland, he lived in what we now call Westland. Mr. Wilson has never had a headache in his entire life, and those are his words. And he will also be a whopping 98 years old on March 13th. So I just wanted to take a moment to thank all of you for coming out. These are the people, when we read about Black history and the civil rights era and people who fought for many of the liberties that we all share today, they were directly a part of it. And so normally, we are all, when school is in session, there are students who come and participate and lead the pledge for us, but coincidentally, it's midwinter break. So I was able to choose who I would like to come in, and I thought that it was very appropriate and right on time to bring in some of our jewels for Black History Month. So thank you so much for coming in. Is there any, would you all like to say anything before we take a group picture? Mr. Wilson?
Well, later.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about you, Mr. Love?
It's a pleasure to live in Westland. Good evening, everyone. Again, Ms. Green did an awesome job of introducing me, so I don't have to go through that part. But to the mayor and the council, we enjoy working with you and the police department. And living in the 28th precinct, we have had a lot of good experience down in that end of town, and we just thank God for this opportunity to be here tonight. Thank you.
Since you guys don't have an hour, I'll forget it. Thank you.
At this time, we're going to ask any family that would like to join us for a group picture to come on up. If you'd like to join us for a group picture, any family that may be present?
Thank you.
Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Green.
Present.
Councilman Hart is absent, excused. Councilman Hammonds. Here. Councilman Hersberg. Here. Councilman Johnson. Here. Councilman Londo.
Here.
President Godbout.
Present.
A quorum is present.
Before we begin the meeting this evening, I would like to take a moment of silence and remember our congressman, our friend, John Dingell, who served this community and all of Michigan and the entire country during his time of service, both in the military and in Congress. Thank you. We'll move on to announcements and presentations. Miriam?
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I'm here once again. Of course, you can't tell with what I'm wearing tonight, what I'm here for, but we're another year, 2019, in our Westland Wayne Relay for Life, and I'm here to announce our kickoff next week, February 26th, here at City Hall. Starts at 6:30 to 8. Everyone is welcome, open to the public. We want people to come, even if they've never even got involved, if they want to know more about it, they're interested. People that have been participants, anyone is welcome. We really appreciate that, as much activity as we want. And of course, we want to supersede what we did last year. And any sponsors, anybody interested, participations. I have on the 2018 participant t-shirt. And some things that will be happening at the kickoff, we'll be announcing the reveal of what our theme is this year. So that will be revealed at the kickoff. And like I said, once again, we appreciate everybody's help in this, and it does take a village, and in this case, a community, with our mayor, directors, city council, police and fire. Just there's so many to name. We really appreciate everything you do, and of course, we want to get closer and closer to not being able to have to walk anymore. and say that we do have this under control and a cure. So I think that I'm not alone in that. So I really appreciate you letting me have a moment. And I will leave flyers at the front desk for everybody to go ahead and pick up, to just, remind themselves of the event. So like I said, next week, February 26th, starts at 6:30 to 8, and we will be having some really cool things happening. And anything you want to know, you can even join as a team, as a participant. And like I said, no pressure, just come and enjoy the evening with us. It's free to the public. Thank you so much, appreciate it.
Thanks, Mary. Commissioner Anderson.
Good evening, council members and mayor and folks at home and in the audience. Just wanted to bring a couple of updates to everyone. Recently, on the 24th of January, the full board, the full commission approved Parks Improvement Program awards. And one of the things that was included, and you've probably already approved the projects before we finally approved it for reimbursement, was $41,469 to construct a storage building at Voss Park. And that was out of the 17-18 millage funds, and $9,000 for equipment enhancements at Stottlemyre Park and Firefighters Park. And that was from Commissioner Hadis's allocation. We'll be allocating $42,432 to Westland in the fiscal year 18-19 millage dollars. So that'll be something, we got the new numbers just last week. And just to remind everyone, it's pothole season, and I think we first get orange barrels as one of the seasons of the year, but this is definitely pothole season. And I just want to remind everyone they can report potholes by calling 888 Road Crew, 888 Road Crew. And if they don't get a response, please call my office. Thank you. Any questions? I'd be happy to take them. Thank you. All right.
We'll move on to citizens' questions or input on the agenda. Citizens will be recognized before the business of the meeting commences to address the council on items that are pertaining to items that are specifically on the business agenda. Citizens are asked to limit their questions or input to 3 minutes. Is there anyone on my left? Anyone on my right? Mrs. McKinney?
On the consent calendar, item D, purchase of replacement asphalt recycler and hot box trailer. Is that addition to what we have, or is it replacing something? Item G, professional service agreement, approval of professional service agreement. Are we still, is this an outsourcing of something, and what is it for? On H, approval of agreement of Detroit Renewable Power for recycling of residential materials. Now, I got a call from somebody on this the other day, and does this mean they're gonna be burning plastic? That's what this person thought. I'd like to know, how is this changing the recycling? And item I, introduction of manpower amendment, planning director. And then if you go over to new business, item 2, it's confirmation of appointment of Mohammed, whatever, was planning director for the city of Westland. So I thought we had a planning director when that replaced Bruce Thompson. So if you could explain that, and that's it.
Anyone on my left? Yes.
I also wanted to mention about H, about the recycling power, renewable power. Is this going to save us money in the long run? Will we still be putting everything in the same bin? Is everything going to stay the same? If there is a savings, will we see that as residents? Number K, you're going to sell the police tower, and shouldn't that be looped in with J? You can't have one without the other, so you can't sell something if you don't have some. I'm just surprised that's listed as two separate items, but unfinished business number 1, the approval of proposed contract with WCA assessing and assessment and maintenance work. Does that mean that any of this maintenance done, is this done, any of the road work, will they be doing road work? And if that is the case, will we get a warranty on any work that they do so that we're ensured that we're getting quality material for our money?
Anyone on my right? Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Good evening, council members and mayor and police department. This is regarding H, the approval of agreement with the Detroit Renewable Power for recycling of the residential materials. I'm a Detroit resident, and I'm urging you to vote no on the agenda. On the agenda item H. I live 1 mile east of the Detroit Renewable Power. My life is affected by the ongoing odor and pollutants that are violations. This facility has violated the Clean Air Act over 800 times in 2013, or since 2013. That's a violation every other day. There are multiple ongoing lawsuits suing the Detroit Renewable Power for these violations, and they affect my community. Burning waste remains the most carbon-intensive, toxic, and expensive form of energy generation. My immediate community experiences asthma at 3 times the state average. Every family in my community has a child with asthma. In addition, burning materials that can be reused or recycled creates a demand for waste. It discourages much needed efforts to conserve resources and protect human health. Recycling is a circular life cycle where an old piece of plastic is renewed with a renewed use. Incinerating or burning your recyclables is not recycling. Burning plastics causes emissions of furans, dioxin, VOCs, all of which are cancer-causing. If you vote yes on H, you will be knowingly sending your recyclables to be burned to a facility that is violating its emissions, allowances, and in the end, poisoning my community. I urge you to vote no on H, and we need your help to protect us and our clean air. You also have an opportunity to create a local recycling program that will provide jobs and actually recycle. So I urge you to look into Eureka Recycling in Minnesota. It's a really great example of a local recycling center. Recycling can create 10 times as many jobs that are created there in this facility. So please, I urge you to vote no again.
Anyone on my left? Yes, Mike.
Good evening to the council, the mayor, police and fire, and everyone in the audience. Mike McDermott, 652 Forest Street. Item H, it's going to be obviously a popular topic tonight. I too urge the council to vote no. I consider myself an environmentalist, and I think anybody that breathes air and drinks water should consider themselves an environmentalist. And if indeed, and I'd certainly like to get some clarity as far as what goes on in that facility, and it sounds like the recyclables that are sent there are indeed sent into the incinerator and burnt up. At that point, we're putting carbons and pollutants and dioxides, as she mentioned prior, into the air. And at that point, I don't think the spirit of our Mission Green program here in the city of Westland is really being lived up to if our recyclables are being burned. I certainly understand that many municipalities across the state and across the country are in a bind with their recycling program, given that China is not buying the plastics as they were before, given the tariffs and the trade war that we've been engaged at the federal level, and that's certainly something that is well beyond our control. But what we can control is being environmentally responsible and choosing a facility that is not burning our plastics and our waste and putting it into the air, harming the people that live in that area, harming all of us here in Southeast Michigan. I think we can certainly look for a more responsible option here as opposed to the Detroit incinerator for our recycling program. As she mentioned as well, it is a violation over 800 times of the Clean Air Act. I've done some research on that myself and have seen those numbers as well. And I think, as I mentioned, anybody that considers themselves an environmentalist, which is anybody that breathes air and drinks water, should urge the city to vote no on this tonight on item H. Thank you.
One on my right. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, council, police chief, fire chief, and the mayor. I'm here to talk about J, the police dispatch. You're here tonight to abolish the contract with Garden City, Wayne, and Inkster in Westland, move forward with contracting out the dispatch services to the city of Dearborn. I ask that you consider 18 crucial factors. Dina Benyo, Karen Takla, Dawn Hackworth, Diane Muselin, Adrian Carter, Tondrea Harris, Angela Clark, Colleen Sonograph, Amy Bullock, LaShawn Robinson, Michelle McNulty, Christine Hoffman, Anne Marie Strange, Sally Wolf, Jamie Shostak, Leslie Lamoureux, Lindsay Thomas, and Danielle Hall. These are the 18 women that you asked to work countless hours of overtime, work short-staffed, and have worked short-staffed for years. They're asked to work 12-hour shifts without breaks and lunches, every weekend, every holiday, 24 hours a day. That dispatch center is staffed. We do not get to close for bad weather. These 18 women, several are single parents. They provide health care coverage for families. One has a child on the autism scale. One is currently battling cancer. What will happen to them when they no longer have a job or health care? Do they go on state aid? Do they attempt to pay for COBRA through the city, which could cost them hundreds of dollars a month? And with no job, or a job that's paying minimum wage, how will that even be possible? Do they go without medical insurance? Then they get penalized under the current Obamacare system. These 18 women provide incomes, some of them single, some of them are the primary breadwinners. What will happen to them financially, their households? Will they have to relocate? With this area having a steady decline of population, no one wants 18 families moving out of the area, losing more tax revenue, more students from our schools. It has been stated to the city council that there'll be no cost savings if we contract out for the first year. Things that you'll need to consider is, what about the cost of paying out these 18 dispatchers for their unused paid time off? What about the cost of the city to cover unemployment benefits for any of these 18 employees that do not find work? The city would have to pay increases to the state and tax rates to cover the unemployment insurance. Typically, those rates with one claim are affected for 3 years. All I just ask that you invest the $230,000 needed for the updates, the equipment. Invest in Westland, invest in your dispatch center and these 18 employees. Thank you.
Anyone on my left? Anyone up? Yes, Ray.
A couple of questions here on H. I'm concerned, I'm the advocate here for people. I don't know if this is the only city that's doing it or if it's Redford, Livonia. I'm just concerned that that environment is going to spread and other people are going to get with this disease. And it doesn't sound good by me listening to other people, what they're saying. Please say no and check into this more and let the people know. They have the right to know, the citizens. And also, I'm concerned about the dispatchers not taking breaks and stuff like that. That's not right. How can they manage on the emergency if they don't have a break? That doesn't sound right. And the tower up to Westland, I think for the tower you guys are selling, where's that money going for? Has it just been standing there for a long period of time? I'd like to know. Thank you.
Anyone on my right? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Melissa Cooper Sargent, and I too am a Detroit resident, and I too live within less than 2 miles of the Detroit Renewable Power Incinerator. And I understand that the economics of the recycling these days is very challenging, and so I do hope that you find a good environmental solution for a place to send your recyclables, but sending them to the incinerator is not recycling. You are sending materials that will be burned and that we will be breathing. Right now, the facility, as you have heard, does not operate within compliance of multiple consent decrees that they have with the state. They are violating these emission standards that they have. They're releasing excess carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, nitrous oxides, and particulate matter. They are in violation that they are not supposed to have any odors, but they regularly do have odors, which are strongest on Sundays when we are at home with our families, especially in the summer and the springtime when we're out in our yards. But as it has been mentioned, odors are the least of our concerns with these emissions. Particularly, we're concerned about particulate matter, which is what it sounds like, little tiny bits of debris. These are little tiny bits of trash that are coming out of these stacks that we're breathing in. They're so tiny that they can get deep into our lungs and get into our bloodstream. These can cause asthma, can exacerbate asthma, can cause heart problems, can cause early death in our seniors. These are health problems that our community is dealing with, and we urge you not to send your recyclables to the incinerator to be burned. We know that the city of Detroit is currently paying about $25 a ton. Some other communities are paying $10 to $15 per ton. We see in your contract that you're looking at about $25 as well. We know that this is probably a stopgap measure as you try to figure out what to do with your recyclables. We would urge you in the meantime that landfilling, while it's not an ideal option, would be about half the price. So please consider that, or consider any other viable options that you have that do not include sending trash to our community. We do have reports. We represent a campaign called Breathe Free Detroit. We've done a report on the incinerator and its construction and its operations. We have copies that we're happy to share with you tonight, and fact sheets as well. Thank you.
One on my left. Yes.
I'm also here to speak concerning H as well, the agreement with Detroit Renewable. As a student of environmental policy, I see this as a tremendous step back in our community. You've already heard of the stories from the 2 Detroit residents today. Detroit is seeing the highest levels of asthma in the state, and that's because of companies like Detroit Renewables, who are poisoning the local communities with their air pollution and violating our EPA standards that are set. By sending the recycling to Detroit, you will not be recycling at all. You'll be poisoning the community residents who live near the company. Given the recent reports from scientists and public officials around the world, we have less than 10 years to act on climate change before we start seeing devastating effects across the world. And we cannot afford to take a tremendous step back like this. So I urge the council to not only vote no tonight, but to form a special committee to look into alternatives. I don't think that a landfill would be a better alternative, but it would certainly save the residents in Detroit. Thank you.
One on my right. Yes, sir.
Good evening, City Council and Mayor. I'm Oscar Arbulu in behalf of Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib's office. I believe all of you have received the email on behalf of the Congresswoman. I'm going to be reading the email and statement in regards to agenda item H. Dear Mayor Wild and council members, I appreciate the opportunity to offer my experience with the Detroit Renewable Energy and its operation in the 13th Congressional District. Please note that in the future, I will contact you beforehand when I have ample notice. Unfortunately, I was not made aware until recently. Air quality concerns in Wayne County have reached national concern, especially with our county being out of compliance with the National Ambient Air Quality Standards, NAAQS, for sulfur dioxide and 8-hour ozone. We have some of the worst air quality and highest rates of asthma among children. It is critical that Westland recognizes that burning waste in an incinerator creates some of the most toxic pollutants. Burning trash creates even more pollutants than coal-fired power plants and is one of the least efficient and most expensive forms of energy generation. In addition, burning trash that can be reused or recycled creates a demand for waste that discourages much-needed efforts to conserve resources and protect human health. We have a climate crisis, and we have a critical role to contribute to changing it. Lastly, please be aware that the Detroit Renewable Power, the parent company of Detroit Renewable Energy, has not been a good neighbor to its host community. Since 2013, the incinerator has produced emissions in excess of limits nearly 800 times. We are all in this together, and because a violation of the Clean Air Act hurts air quality for all of us. Thank you in advance for your consideration of the concerns expressed above. Sincerely, Rashida Tlaib, U.S. Representative, Michigan's 13th District. Thank you.
One on my left. Yes.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Police, Fire. I'm also here to discuss item H. There was some information out on the internet this week. It was a fact sheet actually posted by Councilman Londo. And on that, it says that the waste volume will have been reduced by almost 90% to an inert ash residue. Now, when you reduce something to ash, it's no longer able to be recycled again, which means it's a waste-to-energy program. This is not a recycling program. And it will provide energy, but it will provide energy one time, and then it will never provide energy again because it will be ash. Now, let's say that this is the best solution because I am aware that it was a jump from $18 a ton to $80 a ton on the previous recycling agreement to where we are now, I believe it was said, at $25 a ton for the recyclable. And I'm going to be quoting Councilman Londo here once again. And he was asked if the incinerator would accept our trash as well. And he said that the Detroit Renewable Energy Facility accepts trash as well, although there are no plans in place to change where we take our trash, which is currently to Woodland Meadows. In the same post, but a prior comment, he had posted that our current cost to landfill is $25 per ton, and taking to this new facility in the short term will cost $25 per ton, and a lowered tiered amount for any amount over 4,000 tons per year. Let's say that this is the best alternative out of the alternatives we have available. Why wouldn't we then take our trash there to at least have it made into energy if we're going to go that route? That's all my concerns. Thank you.
Anyone on my right? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, council, people, and citizens. It's nice to have so many people in the room. My name is Diane Feely. I'm a retired auto worker, and like Miss Everett, I was somebody who had to wait until I was 21 to be able to vote. You've heard the facts about the problem that we have in Detroit around clean energy. I live in southwest Detroit, not quite as close as some of the other people from Detroit that have testified, but I have 17 other factories and companies that pollute my area, including all of the truck traffic. So what we desperately need is clean air. But that's not the only thing that we need. We are a poor community. So we suffer not just from a lack of clean air, but from poverty and all of the trauma that poverty brings to our city. So it's really important that you understand that as a responsible suburban neighbor, you should vote against this proposition to bring trash, which then will be burnt and will create more pollution in our neighborhood. I really encourage you to look into a recycling program that can offer an opportunity to actually bring people here good jobs, because recycling can provide good jobs, and burning trash does not. It is a bad cycle to be on. And we have to think about how can we create an environment that we can live in and that our children and our grandchildren can live in. We have the opportunity to do that, but it's a short window, and that's why it's necessary for you to move on this now. So I urge you to vote against H. Thank you.
One on my left. Anyone on my right? Anyone else in the audience? Yes, sir.
I also wanted to thank you for allowing us to speak. I wanted to speak on item H as well. My name is Jeff Gearhart. I'm a research director at the Ecology Center, and we have offices in Ann Arbor and Detroit. We also operate the longest running nonprofit recycling business in the state. We do curbside collection in Ann Arbor and in Washtenaw County, and consult and talk to people around Michigan and around the country about recycling. And we're acutely aware of the challenges facing us with the recyclables market right now. And we are working with our colleagues around the country and around the state to come up with solutions on this. Burning recyclables, burning waste is not recycling, it's not renewable, it's not sustainable, and it's not part of the future. We think, we just found out about this. I remember, I've worked on this for many years. I remember 20 plus years ago when we worked with residents in Westland to help set up the recycling program when it first started here, which was incredible. So this is really an issue of leadership. What does Westland want to be known for? Do we want to be known as the community that tackled a difficult, really global issue and figured out how to make a recycling program work in a way that was sustainable, green, and providing an example for the rest of the state and the country to follow? Or do we want to be known as the city that decided we're going to send our recyclables to be burned? A suburb sending our recyclables to be burned in Detroit. I can see the headline in the paper, and there are going to be headlines. So I think you need to decide, as a council, what do you want that headline to be? And we stand willing to work with you and figure out a solution. I don't think it's environmentally responsible, and I don't think it's fundamentally fiscally responsible. We talked about, we all know what the tipping rates for landfill in Michigan are some of the lowest in the country. If we have a short-term issue, I actually do support landfilling these materials over incinerating them and figuring out a solution. So we stand ready to work with you on this. I think it's about leadership, and it's about what you want the story to be, about how you dealt with this issue. You're not alone, but it's about stepping forward and taking leadership. Thanks.
Anyone on my left? Anyone on my right? Anyone else in the audience? We'll close citizens' comments and move on to the consent calendar. Is there a motion? Motion by Councilman Hersberg, supported by Councilman Landau. Councilman Hersberg?
Thank you. I'd like to move item F from the consent calendar to new business, item 1A, and item H off of the consent calendar to new business, item 1B.
Those will actually be 2A and 2B.
That's right.
New business, under new business. So that was F and H. Councilwoman Green.
After you call for his motion to be accepted or to be accepted, if it's going to be supported, then I'm going to make a motion for another one to be moved.
Sir? Yeah. Councilwoman Green.
I also make a motion for item K to be moved to the consent calendar, or excuse me, under unfinished business to item 1C, or excuse me, new business, item 1C, or excuse me, yeah, 1C.
2C.
K to 2C.
2C. And through the chair to, I don't know, I would like I would like through the chair to the mayor or through the chair to the police chief, out of respect for this woman who just sat here and talked about 18 jobs, and you were present during our study session, I think it is fitting and out of respect, someone should explain to her why the city is recommending the change to the city of Dearborn, which is going to result in those job cuts. I don't think we should just bulldoze right over her and all they see is it's approved. I think that it should be explained to them why it is being recommended for council to vote in favor of transferring our services to the city of Dearborn. Thank you.
There's a motion in support on the consent calendar. There were questions on a couple of other items that are on the consent calendar. We'll move on to, or we'll go with the first one, item D, the purchase of a replacement asphalt box. Doug?
Yes, Council President, that's going to be a scheduled replacement of an existing trailer that's currently not in operation.
Thanks. And item G. Dan?
Yep, so Maximus, it's they're gonna provide a central service cost allocation plan. This is not an outsourcing of something. This will enhance the documentation and calculate the interdepartmental charges for the city.
There was a question on item I, the manpower introduction. Steve?
Through the chair, the manpower amendment's necessary. Right now, that's a contracted position. And item 2 on new business is what this is all about, is for to hire an actual employee in that spot.
Thanks. And then on item J, Chief, if you want to weigh in on that.
Through the chair to council and to our residents and dispatchers. So throughout our country, many cities and counties have recognized the service advantages and cost savings associated with a consolidated 911 dispatch center. For the past several years, I've been researching options on how to improve our dispatch center by growing for not only the city of Westland, but for also our current dispatch partners of Inkster, Wayne, and Garden City. I feel that we've found that opportunity now with the city of Dearborn. And to give you a little background on what's been taking place, in 2013, the city of Dearborn was awarded a $3.2 million grant to build a state-of-the-art 911 dispatch center with the idea of growing into, at some point, a Western Wayne County regional dispatch center. The goals of this were to improve costs and improve service for all the communities that are associated. 2016, Dearborn hired a consultant to assist with the design and development of the building and also to streamline a dispatch process that they felt would work best. Currently, the city of Dearborn dispatches for Dearborn and Melvindale. A little more background on that. The city of Dearborn in 2018 got a 6 Sigma certification for their dispatch center. So basically they had 6 Sigma review come through to evaluate the efficiency of their dispatch center, which they were certified in.
There is cost savings that goes along with this, but this is much more than cost savings. This is about improving public service to our communities and to our police and firefighters. The crime has no border. We've seen that with our current dispatch center that we have with Inkster, Westland, Garden City, and Wayne. Our criminals are crossing borders and they're moving along, and when you have police chases that go from one city to another, we realize that consolidating together streamlines communication. Information sharing streamlined by our with our dispatch center already with our current cities. Our fire departments have been working together under mutual aid agreements. This simplifies their coordination efforts. And in case of a catastrophic regional incident, whether it was natural or man-made, a dispatch consortium would be the single point of coordination that would enhance our resources. It would allow our dispatchers to deploy equipment and officers and firefighters in a more efficient manner. But what's most important about this is this gives us the ability to increase on a daily basis the number of dispatchers that we have in the seats for our communities. It kind of goes to exactly what we were saying right here. We have fantastic dispatchers, but they are overworked and we are short, and here's the ability for us to improve that, to put more dispatchers in the seats for our police, fire, and for our residents. Currently, the Westland Dispatch Center employs 18 dispatchers. The model with Dearborn will employ 40 dispatchers. It'll employ a supervisor, it'll employ a director to oversee the program. There'll be dedicated police dispatchers, fire dispatchers, backup dispatchers, lean operators. While doing this will increase the efficiency of our dispatching service. The Dearborn, for in regards to our employees, Dearborn wants to hire our dispatchers. They recognize that the ability to bring over our dispatchers is going to improve this program completely. They've created a plan that they're going to create a separate eligibility list for our dispatchers and hire them with preference over anybody that they already currently have on a list. They've also put some things into play that would allow a lateral transfer. So what our current dispatchers are making here, the ones that go over would be fit into their pay scale at the same or greater pay that they're already making right now. On top of that, there are cost savings that go along with this. The next generation 911 is going to cost our consortium about $207,000. Dearborn is already equipped for that and ready to go with their new center. But beyond that, there's also an additional cost savings of about $400,000 a year for our consortium. We have to keep in mind that these other communities that we provide a service for also see that there's a cost savings and there's a chance that these communities could go on to Dearborn without us, which then puts us in a situation where we wouldn't have the opportunity to do it. So, the first year we're not going to have some cost savings. That's because we are working with the union to take care of our dispatchers. There are 3 dispatchers that are close to retirement that we're going to maintain. That way we can get them to their retirement dates. And we're going to be trying to work with the city of Dearborn to make sure that all of our dispatchers that want jobs there have the opportunity to get jobs there.
Thanks, Chief. Are there any other discussion from the council? Any other discussion? Any dissent? Any dissent? Hearing no dissent, motion carries unanimously.
Council has approved the following consent calendar items. Minutes of the regular meeting held February 4, 2019. Minutes of the study session held February 4, 2019. Minutes of the study session held February 11, 2019. Approval of purchase of replacement asphalt recycler and hotbox trailer for the Department of Public Services. Total cost not to exceed $22,850. Approval of purchase of replacement hoist for the Department of Public Services. Total cost not to exceed $33,797.07. Approval of professional services agreement with Maximus Consulting Services Incorporated for implementation of a central services cost allocation plan. The mayor and city clerk are authorized to execute the agreement on behalf of the city. Introduction of Manpower Amendment 2019-002, add planning director. Adoption of prepared resolution concerning the consolidation of emergency dispatch services in Dearborn and the termination of the current interlocal agreement concerning dispatch services and corresponding interlocal agreement for police and fire dispatch services between the city of Dearborn and the city of Westland. The mayor and city clerk are authorized to execute on behalf of the city. Last item approved on the consent calendar, adoption of prepared resolution to establish the MERS Retiree Health Funding Vehicle Trust Fund. Moving to unfinished business, item 1. Approval of proposed contract with WCA Assessing for assessment and maintenance work for city property. If approved, the mayor and city clerk are authorized to execute the contract on behalf of the city. This item was postponed February 4, 2019.
Councilman Johnson,
I'd like to move to deny.
some motion to deny. Is there support for that motion?
Support.
Motion by Councilman Johnson, supported by Councilwoman Green. Councilwoman Green, did you want to say something on this?
Yes. I'd like to state that although many of you have been looking at this was a conversation that we had, or a discussion that council had during our last council meeting. It was postponed to the meeting today. It was put back before us with absolutely no changes at all. As it was the exact same contract. And I spoke in great detail in terms of why it is not, in my opinion, appropriate to honor this contract. And so I support the motion of Councilman Johnson.
Is there any other discussion from the council? Mayor?
Thank you. City Council, as you deliberate on your motion here, WCA Assessing did contact us today and asked that this be postponed again. I think that they've heard what the council had to say, but because of the requirement to have it on the agenda by 4 o'clock last Monday, they didn't have a chance to rework their contract. So as you consider your decision tonight, the WCA Assessing did ask that this be postponed to the next meeting tonight. Thank you.
Councilman Johnson?
Yes, just in regards to the request, I understand they had 2 weeks to get this done. That doesn't preclude us from voting this up or down tonight. If it goes down tonight, they can always present a revised contract at a later date.
Councilwoman Green?
I would agree with Councilman Johnson. This contract is not even expired. As I stated at the last council meeting, it's not expired. It has not been sent out to bid. There is absolutely no reason why we should postpone it again. I feel it is disrespectful and irresponsible of them to not only be the city assessor, but to make no changes and send that contract back before us and ask for another postponement. I would like to move forward with the vote, and I once again support the motion by Councilman Johnson.
Is there any other discussion from the council? Any other discussion from the council? I'll, just a comment. You know, it's an unusual circumstance when a petitioner asks to have a postponement that we don't do a postponement. The fact that we postponed it versus tabling it at the last meeting is what led to us having it on this agenda again. Had the item been tabled, it would have given the contractor adequate time to come before, sit down with the mayor and the council and come up with modifications to their contract, and then have it brought back up for a vote by the council. In this case, they've asked for more time to try and do that. Obviously, based on the fact that no one has made a motion to postpone, that's not the intent of what council is going to do. So we're going to take a vote on turning this down because it's a motion to deny.
Can we still make a motion to postpone?
Yes, you can still make a motion.
No. You have to deal with the previous motion. It has to be withdrawn before you can have another motion.
Motion to postpone takes precedent over the existing motion.
So if we vote no to the postponement, we will proceed to a vote on the
Correct.
original.
Correct.
I'll make a motion to postpone if I can get support.
It's a motion to postpone. Is there support? I'll support the motion to postpone. Is there any discussion on the motion to postpone? Any discussion on the motion to postpone? Councilwoman Green.
I am not in support of the motion to postpone, and just so you all know who were not present at the last meeting, because for the sake of time, I was intending not to go to explain what occurred with that contract. That contract that they put before us is a city assessor who is renting space at our city hall, not renting, he occupies office space. For multiple years, he does not pay a leasing fee. He sent a contract to the mayor sent a contract to city council recommending that we approve a contract that from the base services contract that it did not expire until the end of June, would have given them from the amount that we're paying them today. They wanted a contract that extended all the way out to 2022. The amount of money that we would have gave them totals 33% more than what they're getting right now. And not only did they want that contract voided, they wanted to void another one that has 1.5 years left on the expiration and give them a 4% locked increase for the remainder of this new term that they want. They refused to send it out to bid, so there's no concern about being cost effective or taxpayers' dollars. This person or company has been doing the assessing for quite some time in the city. They not only did they not send it out to bid, they're saying that is the best that they can do. At the last council meeting, I explained to the community that we gave our firefighters a 1% increase. And at the last budget study session, we had to, whether someone says, as was said at the previous council meeting, that it was not true, this is true. We had to decide between a potential cut that would have taken place in our fire department or to remove money that was allocated in the budget we got from the mayor for newsletters. And we had to
Councilwoman Green, this is on the motion to postpone.
I'm talking about the motion to postpone, and I'm explaining it to the community because there's a lot of people sitting here who don't know. So I think the community deserves to know why I am not supporting this and why it is not putting them at a disadvantage for us to vote tonight. We actually could have voted at the last council meeting, but Councilman Hammonds made a motion to postpone it, which gave them 2 more weeks to make any revisions after the fact that the city is refusing to send it out to bid. So to present this to the community as if we are doing a disservice to this poor contractor who wants to take our taxpayers' dollars and increase it by 33% as if they are the only company in the United States of America or Southeast Michigan that can handle or at least bid on a city assessing contract. So those are some of the facts that I provided at the last meeting, and I am absolutely not in support to offer a postponement yet again. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion on the motion to postpone? Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Green.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilman Johnson.
Just for the record, I will not be supporting a postponement either.
Councilwoman Green.
No.
Councilman Hammonds. No. Councilman Hart is absent. Councilman Hersberg.
No.
Councilman Johnson.
No.
Councilman Londo.
Yes.
President Godbout.
Yes.
Motion fails. Moving to the question itself, the original question to deny.
Is there any further discussion on the motion to deny? Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Green.
Yes.
Councilman Hammonds.
Yes.
Councilman Hart is absent. Councilman Hersberg.
Yes.
Councilman Johnson.
Yes.
Councilman Londo.
No.
President Godbout.
No.
Motion passes. Moving to item 2A, which was item F on the consent calendar, approval of amendment to extend the inspection period to the March 2018 purchase agreement with 3 Oaks Land Acquisition LLC for the Hawthorne Valley property. The mayor and city clerk are authorized to execute the agreement on behalf of the city.
Is there a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to deny.
It's a motion to deny the extension. Is there support for that motion?
I'm going to support that for some further discussion.
It's a motion to deny by Councilman Hersberg, supported by Councilman Johnson. Councilman Hersberg?
Sure. This came up a couple of years ago, and at this point, it looks like we're extending it again. They're having some issues with payment to the city, and maybe several other issues with, in regards to the MDEQ and some of the demolitions that have to take place over there. I'd like to see this go back out for sale and see if we can get a better deal.
Councilman Johnson?
I too have some questions, because it says here, this took place in March of 2018. We're now almost 1 year away, and they still have not purchased the property. I would like a lot of further details as to why they haven't come up with the money, or at least part of the money. We've already extended this once, I do believe. To extend it again just makes no sense. If there's another interested party, or if they'd like to bid on it again, I too would like to see it go back on the market. We might get additional funds, but at least we haven't been given a real explanation why in 1 year the deal hasn't been inked. To say they're extending an inspection, it doesn't take that long to inspect a few acres and a couple of dilapidated buildings. So I don't understand why they need another extension unless they are having funding problems. And if that's the case, I think they should make that known so at least we have all the details.
City, yes, Mike?
If I could address City Council, this is the same agreement that Council has already approved. It's a request for an additional extension of time as it states in the motion. If the terms of the proposed purchase agreement were satisfactory previously, then it really just becomes an issue whether Council wants to extend the time for the potential purchaser to do their due diligence and investigate that. If that is not extended, then it's the Council and the city is taking the chance of whether that property goes back on the market and what happens at that point. But again, how it goes back to how satisfied the city was with the original terms of the purchase agreement, and if you still want that proposal to go forward. Thank you.
Mayor?
Thank you. Unfortunately, Mr. Fassone's not here tonight. He's been handling the negotiations on this. So what we have, council, is council's approved to the agreement to sell the property, and actually the money for this sale is in the current budget. Council's already approved a preliminary site plan for the project. The developer has developed a website, and they're actively marketing selling these homes, and they're moving right along. The reason that they're asking for additional time is because they're working with Wayne County on securing and Mike, I wish Jim was here. It's either with Wayne County or it's with the MDEQ. What they're kind of looking for is the ability to release the stormwater from their property. So I feel comfortable moving forward. I had a lot of the same concerns that the council's voted here, that they've voiced here tonight. But at the end of the day, we did talk with the county. We actually had the county parks folks in our office, and they confirmed that they are working with the developer, and they're working with the state of Michigan to handle the stormwater from this property. So with this extension comes some hard money for the city. That's, I think, in the fine print there. So the developer is ready to come back with the final site plan for the project. I think it's something that we were excited about. It's a problematic piece of property because it's in the floodplain and trying to deal with the stormwater runoff from that property. But at the end of the day, we feel comfortable granting this extension, and would ask council for just a little bit more patience on this one. Thank you.
Councilman Johnson?
Thank you. Through the chair to the city attorney, they signed a purchase agreement like we did, right? So they are bound by that. I'm still questioning why the city has received no money, if I might, through the chair, to Mr. Smith, have we been paid any dollars on this property?
Through the chair, Councilman Johnson, there was an original deposit, but the actual dollar amount of the sale has not been received by the city.
And again, I can't understand that it's listed here for further inspections. A year's a long time to get inspections done. I just can't, I can't understand why we're 12 months later and the property hasn't been purchased. If they intend to purchase the property, why don't they just pay for it? And if they intend to go forward with the project, they should purchase the property. I just, extension after extension doesn't make sense to me.
To clarify, the way that it's written on the agenda for inspections, but basically what they're doing is asking to extend the due diligence period, which is per the contract. So the original deposit is to be applied towards the purchase price. The hard dollars that come in with this extension would be additional dollars the city would receive. So like I said, it's a due diligence. If anytime you're looking at real estate, there's always going to be a due diligence period, and I think as part of the original contract, they did have the opportunity to extend that. So once again, I just ask council to be patient, and at the end of the day, this project and any other project that's going to go on that site is going to have to get over this hurdle on stormwater. So I think we're pretty close on this one. To go back to the drawing board, I think would be pretty tough, and it would also trigger some complications in our current budget. Thank you.
Councilwoman Green.
Yes, my question is, if we vote against this, will the city be, if you, through the chair to the mayor, you just stated that the contract allows them to extend due diligence or to perform due diligence to the extent that they're satisfied, is what I'm gathering by what you just said. If council votes against this, does this give this potential buyer a legal standings to, and maybe this is a better question for the city attorney, can they possibly sue us for breach of contract? Or what is the repercussion, if any?
Through the chair, the amendment to the inspection period indicates they have an inspection period. It also has a second extension that the purchaser can request in writing to the city, requesting an additional 120 days at that point. So this is, if they've met the requirements of the written request for an extension, they could take action to try to enforce the purchase agreement if they've given the written request, as I say, and in compliance with the amendment.
Have they done that? Does anybody know? Are they currently in compliance?
I do not know if there was a written request for this extension that's on the agenda today.
Excuse me. Councilman Hersberg wanted to be recognized next. Councilman Hersberg.
I wasn't done with my questions, and I can actually continue until I'm done. You can't cut me off and then go to Peter. You make me wait, so let's keep it, let's treat everybody equal, as I've asked many times from you in the past. Mayor, would you please add insight to my question in terms of their legal standings? Are they in compliance with this contract, or can we be sued by denying this request?
Mayor?
Through the chair, Jim Fasone spent a lot of time on this, and we do feel that what they're asking for is allowable through the contract that we have already approved. So as far as would they be able to sue us if we turn it down, that's a legal question that's outside of my realm. But at the end of the day, we do feel that the process is moving forward. This second period of due diligence is spelled out in their contract. So at the end of the day, the administration feels comfortable with this extension, and we do think that we're pretty close to the end on this. So thank you.
Mike?
If I may, through the chair, in the council packet, there is a memo from February 7th from the developer where they explain the reasons why they need this additional extension and is a written request for the extension. So again, you'd have to get into the details, and ultimately, obviously, if it went into litigation, could not predict the outcome of that. But when you look at the purchase agreement and that the request for extension has to be in writing and explain the reasons for the extension, certainly that February 7th memorandum indicates their request and the reasons.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion from the council? Any further discussion? Councilman Hersberg first. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the motion to deny still stands. They've had plenty of time. I think if they wanted to move forward and get something built there, they would have done it by now. The residents want us to see, get this property redeveloped, and a year and a half now is just way too long. This was the same property we had other proposals for. This was the property that they were looking at putting the art center on, and we instead sold it to this person for a bargain rate. I'd like to see it go back out to market. I truly believe we can get significantly more than what they're paying.
Councilman Johnson.
Thank you. To the chair, to the city attorney, if you know, when did the first extension expire?
I don't have that right with me.
Well, the other part of the question is, if they need an additional extension and the other one expired 4 months ago, I'm just using those numbers, shouldn't the additional extension been tacked on to the time period directly after the other one expiring? I mean, can they wait 6 months or 12 months and ask for an additional extension? Or should they be coupled together as an extension and then, well, we didn't get it done, so we need another extension? Does it have to be tacked on to the date or somewhere close to the other one expiring?
I just have the amendment to the contract. I don't have the original contract with me.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Hammonds.
Thank you, Council President. From working in real estate, to see this request is not that odd. It's not an unusual request. I know that they've asked for one request before and then another for their due diligence, but when you look at this piece of property, you have a very, very complex piece of property. There's a lot of different issues that could come up from the property. A lot of, as the mayor had mentioned about the stormwater, it's a difficult piece, and I think we should take our time here and give them the extension. I believe that you're going to go through this same process if you have another buyer. It is only another 120 days. They're going to have a due diligence period. They're going to have some, at minimal, probably 6 months if you had another buyer that it's going to go through this. The company, I believe, is working in good faith. I've seen their marketing. I've seen what they've been trying to do to market to buyers and get this project moved along. So it doesn't sound like to me that it is a finance issue. It's more of getting the items worked out with the county. So I don't think we'll be doing ourselves any favor if we denied this tonight. I think we should at least give them the additional 120 days and then see where we stand after that.
Councilwoman Green.
Yes, I actually agree with Councilman Hammonds, having an extensive background in property management and real estate myself. I understand in terms of the delays and how frustrating it may be, but based on the information that we did receive from the city attorney tonight and the information provided by the mayor, I don't feel it is unreasonable to allow them the extension, and actually we are contractually obligated to allow it. So for that reason, I am not in objection of this. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion from the council? Any further discussion? Councilman Hersberg.
Yeah, I'm still not in support of having this go through tonight. This is our last chance to get something better on the property than just a few houses. My vote for it a year and a half ago was contingent on many things, including the bridge repairs and other things in the back part of the property. But now it looks like they're giving that land away if this goes through. So the motion to deny still stands.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
On the motion to deny, Councilwoman Green?
No.
Councilman Hammonds? No. Councilman Hart is absent. Councilman Hersberg?
Yes.
Councilman Johnson?
Yes.
Councilman Londo?
No.
Councilman President Godbout?
No.
Motion to deny fails.
Need
a motion to approve.
To approve.
Make a motion to approve.
Councilman Londo, is there support? Support by Councilman Hammonds. Is there any discussion, any further discussion on this item? Any further discussion? Councilwoman Green.
Thank you. I would like to state for the record, through the chair to Councilman Hersberg, this project was awarded prior to me being sworn into council. This was awarded during the last council term when you were a present council member. And if I recall correctly, you did not vote. I was present that night. And there was a study session, and I was present for the study session. You did not vote in objection to this project. So I just want to state for the record that although it has been a while, based on the information from the attorney that we received tonight, and property law, they do have, it would appear that they have a legal standing. And you voted, and when you referenced giving, we can get something better, you voted to allow them to purchase this property without objection. So I think it would be in our benefit not to put the city in a position to possibly look at litigation by breaching the terms of a contract that the previous council unanimously agreed to. Thank you.
Councilman Hersberg.
Yeah, I think if the city attorney wants to reiterate, I think he mentioned we're not looking at litigation. If this is denied, they would still be able to push forward the purchase agreement and not be suing the city. Is that correct?
Through the chair, if the extension is not granted, then that would be the end of the purchase agreement. So they, in the original purchase agreement, they had to request an extension in writing, which they've done with an explanation. So they have done, I believe, what they need to do to request the extension.
Okay. Well, it's still up to a council decision. That's the reason we're voting now. So we're not obligated to vote in any way. A lot of the discussion you brought up from that study session, I had somebody reach out to me before that study session. They wanted to purchase the property for more than what it was given to for this person. When they called City Hall, they were told the property was already sold. So that should tell you enough.
Is there any further discussion on the motion to approve? Any further discussion? I will just say that at this point, granting the extension to let them continue on with this project is the right thing to do. You know, we've talked numerous times about this parcel and other parcels and the ability for, or the difficulty with the city working with contractors and business owners and trying to be business friendly. The proposal previous to this, which was for not as much money, was for, if my colleagues recall, was for a storage facility, which brought up all kinds of angst from the residents about putting a storage facility there. So we get a developer, and as was mentioned, this is a very difficult piece of property because of the terrain that's involved with this property and its closeness to the floodplain in Hines Park. So developing this property is problematic. I think that this proposal, which brings residential to the neighborhood, is exactly what the community was looking for, based off of the feedback that we got when we first brought it forward and the outcry from when it was potentially going to be a storage facility instead on the site. So I'm supporting extending the contract so that they can do their due diligence with both the DEQ and Wayne County. Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Green?
Yes.
Councilman Hammonds? Yes. Councilman Hart is absent. Councilman Hersberg?
No.
Councilman Johnson?
No.
Councilman Londo?
Yes.
President Godbout?
Yes.
Motion passes. New business item 2B. Approval of agreement with Detroit Renewable Power for recycling of residential materials.
Is there a motion? Motion by Councilman Johnson. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Councilman Londo. Mayor?
Thank you, City Council, and thank you for those in the audience that came out tonight to discuss this agenda item, and also for your support for the environment and for recycling. So I think you should be commended for coming out, because there's conversations like this happening in cities all across, not just Michigan, but across the United States, because as one resident said here tonight, that the economics of recycling have changed, and they've changed dramatically, and they've changed in an extremely short period of time. The city is basically looking at a business decision with our recyclables. The city of Westland, and council, bear with me, because I know that we had a study session, so the council heard kind of my comments last week, but there were a lot of residents that weren't here, so I'll share them again. The city is part of a sanitation authority that's made up of 5 communities, and we're under contract with Waste Management for our to landfill our solid waste, which is the trash. So everything that we put in the black containers goes to Woodland Meadows per contract with Waste Management. We have 7 years left on that contract. So we currently pay Woodland Meadows $28 a ton for landfill. So everything that we ship to the landfill costs us $28 a ton. The city of Westland started a recycling program. It's been about 10 years, and I appreciate Mr. Gerhardt. I appreciate him being here tonight, because I'd forgotten the Ecology Center actually helped us craft what I consider one of the most successful recycling programs in a suburban city. They actually, I think, introduced us to the Recycle Bank piece of it, where we rewarded our residents for recycling. So the city of Westland has a very successful recycling program. So from the very first day, we've been hovering about 78% participation. Our residents really took to it. Even though we don't give them Recycle Bank points anymore, I think we've changed their behavior, and we recycle. We recycle about 5,000 tons a year, which is about 20% of the city's trash. And we've been consistent on that number now for getting close to a decade. When we first started this program, the recycling market was totally different. We actually were receiving, early on in the program, $40 a ton for our recyclables. So imagine, sending it to the landfill, paying $28, or sending it to the recycling center, getting paid $40. So it was an incredible program for us. That market has softened over the years, and it's changed a lot. In the beginning, we had a contract with the recycling center in New Boston. We had a direct contract between the city of Westland and the recycling center. Over the years, that changed ownership, and the new owners would not enter into a long-term agreement with us, because the market was changing daily. So the city's been working for quite a period of time on a month-to-month contract with the recycling center. We were paying $18 a ton for our recycling. So every ton that we took there, we paid $18 to have it processed. It was still $10 cheaper than taking it to the landfill. Well, a couple of things happened, and I talked with the city council about it, and I kind of put it on their radar, because the National League of Cities put a white paper together about rethinking recycling and telling cities that they need to start thinking about the way they recycle, because the market's changing. And I brought some copies of these. I can share them with you, and the National League of Cities has it right on their homepage of their website, so it's a national issue. So we received notice from our recycling center that in February, our rate was going to change from $18 a ton to $80. So we were paying $18, so starting in February, it was going to go to $80. Landfilling cost is $28. We pay for all of our sanitation costs under a dedicated millage through the city of Westland. And under that millage, we pay for trash pickup and recycling, and we have a drop-off center. We purchased a lot of new containers over the years. We also brought back the bulk pickup program, which was a costly thing, but it was something that I think it was the right thing to do. But all that works under our millage. With the cost of recycling going to $80 a ton, it would just have a devastating effect on the city. There's the sanitation millage cannot absorb that cost. Would have to fund the additional costs out of general fund. So what we did then was we reached out to our trash hauler, Midwest Recycling, and we asked him, he's got to come up with some other options for us. So he did his own due diligence, and at the same time, other cities were starting to hear word too that recycling was changing. And every city's kind of got in a different space. I mean, it depends on what your contract looks like. Our recyclables go right to the recycling center. In other cities, because Waste Management does their garbage pickup, Waste Management can take it to their landfill even though they think they're recycling it. Those are things that, so for the short period of time, they have it, their costs may not go up because their hauler can take it to the landfill without affecting the contract. So we don't have that luxury in Westland, so we have to figure out what we're gonna do. The last thing that we wanna do, and I can tell you that I know the city council feels the same way, the last thing we wanna do is pull the plug on our recycling program. We've come too far, we recycle too much. And with that said, is the last thing I would wanna do is tell people that we're just gonna send it to the landfill, because once we change people's behavior that they can just throw everything in that blue container because it's going to the landfill, who knows if we'll ever get them back the right way. So the reason the recycling markets change is because most of the recyclables in the United States go to China. And China changed the way that they were accepting recyclables. A lot of the recyclables that went there were things that we would consider trash in the United States. But China's produces just as much waste as we produce, so they've gotten better at mining their own waste for recyclables, and they're much more stringent on what they'll accept. At the same time, we got into a tariff war with China on imports and exports, and it's had a negative effect on these recyclables. So what's happened with the recycling center that we take our stuff to is that they've had to, number one, it's an automated system. They've had to slow down their system because they don't have end users for the stuff. So they're kind of, instead of doing it automated, they're actually kind of cherry picking out certain things that have value. Then the rest of it, they're sending to the landfill. But at the end of the day, they only have a certain amount of excess capacity. New Boston does not want them to stack all this stuff up where people can see it, and some of this stuff, if you store it outdoors, it gets ruined and it doesn't have any value. So they're in a pickle, and I think in my heart that if we were to keep sending them stuff for $80 a ton, then they'd charge us $100, then they'd charge us $120, because they don't want this stuff because they don't have anywhere to put it, and they don't have anybody to sell this stuff to. So that kind of brings us to where we're at. So our trash hauler came back with a couple different options. Number one was there's a transfer site that's operating in Hamtramck. And it's basically just a place they're taking garbage, they're letting them dump it, and then they're sorting it by hand and pulling out some stuff they can recycle, then the rest of it's going to the landfill. They told us our price would be $40 a ton to take stuff there. Remember, it's $28 at the landfill, so Hamtramck said they would take it for $40. If they would enter a long-term contract or not, that we don't know. So the next stop was the waste-to-energy plant in Detroit. And I think somebody had mentioned that Detroit pays $25 a ton to recycle, and we learned that with that $25, the waste-to-energy plant has to do a lot of other things for the city of Detroit too. But with our volume, they told us that if we entered into a one-year deal, which is a short-term deal, that we too could recycle for 20, they would take our volume for $25 a ton. They said if we could commit to over 4,000 tons, then it would be $22.50. So we historically have been over that 4,000 mark every year, so we know we'll hit it. Per this contract, we'll start off at $25 a ton. Then when we hit 4,000 tons, they'll rebate us back to the beginning, so our cost would be $22.50. So we had to make a decision quick because we were looking at facing $80 a ton here in February. So I declared an emergency with the city council, and we entered into an agreement with them to start taking our recyclables there February 1st, February 9th.
Week ago Monday.
All right, week ago Monday, we had a study session. So what we asked council for tonight is to approve that emergency agreement, and will give us a chance to keep our eyes open and try to find some other options. A couple other things to consider too, council, is because it's not a Westland problem, this is affecting everybody. The Conference of Western Wayne, which is made up of the 18 Western Wayne communities, they meet once a month and they work together on regional issues. They put together a task force, and the task force is headed by the supervisor of Canton, myself representing Westland, and the mayor of Dearborn. And we're trying to look and see with the 18 communities if we put our volume together. Not all those communities recycle. Some of them still don't have recycling programs. But the ones that do, we in a short period of time, pulled everybody's information together to figure out how they're being affected under their current contracts, what their volume is. So the task force now is going to look and see if perhaps we can put our volume together and come up with another solution. At the end of the day, there's not a lot of options. The waste-to-energy plant, if more than one city was to bring waste there, I think we could probably negotiate a better deal too, based on volume, because it's a volume business. So the task force is going down that path to see if we put our volume together, can we save some money? The other track they're going down is in Washtenaw County. They're creating and it may have already been created. It's an authority to recycle. It's a regional county-wide authority. There's one that's very successful in Oakland County called SACRA. This is being Washtenaw County. We had members of that organization at our task force, and we asked them, is there the ability that perhaps some of the Western Wayne communities could be incorporated into that authority? So that's a longer-term solution because they're not up and running at capacity. They're in the various stage of coming online and figuring out just how they're going to handle Washtenaw County. So obviously, bringing us in would make that a little bit tougher. But I think that there's enough communities in Western Wayne County that if we put our recycling together, I think that we have the ability to do something, but the market has to change. So what we're pretty much asking City Council tonight to do is to approve this agreement. We'll continue to take just the recyclable portion of our waste stream to the waste energy plant as we continue to look for other options. To those folks that are here from Detroit, I had a chance to tour the facility. We took a small group from the city down there, and I didn't realize that the energy plant, the waste energy plant, was actually created under Coleman Young's administration, so it's been there for a long time. And while one thing I was impressed with was, it appears to be a state-of-the-art facility. When you look at, they're pushing steam throughout the city and creating energy too. The concept of it, was maybe before its time. The fact that they built that right in the middle of a neighborhood just blows my mind. So I can't imagine, throughout the years, when we were there, it seemed to be operating on a pretty good level. We didn't notice smells while we were there. We were watching for things like that. But at the end of the day, I think this is a short term for the city and our recycling stream. And the one thing I don't want I don't want anybody to, we're not saying this is how the city of Westland recycles. We know that. We know the difference between recycling and incinerating. We had an incinerator. We burned all of our trash for a long time, and that was another way that we met the Ecology Center, because they really were helpful when the city got out of the incinerator that we were part of. So at the end of the day, I'm not going to say this is how we recycle. This is how short-term we're looking at handling our recycle stream. At the end of the day, I think this gives us time to, like, people keep recycling, putting the recyclable things in the blue container so that we can try to find some better solutions. The recycling center tells me that as the market changes, we may have to limit some of the things that we put in there, and not all that plastic is desirable anymore. The glass certainly is not desirable. The plastic bags aren't desirable. So as this changes, we may have to educate people on, and we may not be able to put as much stuff in the blue containers. So this one's a tough one, and I know that City Council has been asked to make a couple of tough votes tonight. But as far as the budget goes, you know, if there's no way we can pay $80 to handle the recyclables. And the last thing I want to do is intermingle our trash with our recycling and send it to the landfill. I just think that's I think once we go down that road, it's going to be tough to bring it back. So that's all I have, unless council has any more questions.
Any discussion from the council? Any discussion from the council? Councilwoman Green?
Yes. I would like to state that I am in opposition to this measure to take our recycling to the city of Detroit, and for multiple reasons. But I don't know, the mayor mentioned that the facility was built during Coleman Young's administration. City council, whoever was on city council at that time, approved it. So if the 7 of us got together and decided that we are going to take vacant land in the city of Westland, regardless of the protests and outcries, and I'm assuming there was some at that time, regardless of the protests, if the 7 of us get together and say we are going to build whatever, a landfill or whatever it is, it will happen in the city of Westland. So you imagine whatever council or mayor allowed that to happen in Detroit at that time does not matter. If Westland were to do something like that to our residents, our community would literally burn City Hall down with all of us sitting in the chairs while they're doing it. And imagine if we not only set an incinerator up to burn our trash or recycling materials, but now we want to make money in Westland. So guess what? Now we're going to let Detroit bring all of their junk down here, and we're going to burn Detroit's junk because now we want to make some money while we're saving money burning ours. This issue is not just about making money. We just had a study session last week. It's been, 7 days? There has not been an extensive study if we can find a better option. It's just, well, the contractor said the fee is going up to $80 an hour. We didn't get paperwork saying that it was going up to $80 an hour. We don't get paperwork with most of these contracts that I vote against when they say I need hundreds of thousands and millions more dollars, because when you think about the money that the city has already given many of these contractors, we've given them millions on their word alone, which is why I don't vote for it. But we have not, in my opinion, done enough research to say there's nothing else that we can do. I think lives are worth more than saving a few dollars. These type of issues with these incinerators or whatever it is, whether it's Flint water or whatever crisis, statistically and throughout history, it normally happens in communities of poverty and communities of color. It is not right, but the fact is the center, it is there. I'm not supporting it. I don't think a life is worth any amount of money, and I guarantee you If it were set up in the city of Westland, we would all be moving out of Westland. And we can send our trash down there to your back door because it's not affecting us. As the mayor said, he didn't say it's a Detroit issue, but he implied it. The fact of the matter is, your babies mean just as much as mine, and so does your life. I will never vote for that. We need to take time as a council to make sure before we do this, knowing that this facility got more than 800 DEQ violations in the last 5 years for the emissions this isn't just a state of the art and nothing is wrong, it's documented. I sent the entire council a report today on the information I got from a lawyer and the Breathe Free Community Group. We need to think about these decisions before we make them and treat this circumstance as if you had however many senseless people on council 30 or 40 years ago that said yes. It's not affecting us today because it's not here in Westland. But in 30 years, I'll be in my 70s. We are here to do more than just save money. This is impacting people's lives, and it's documented that there is an issue. And I will not support it, and I would urge the other councilmen to vote according to your conscience on this request. Thank you.
Councilman Johnson.
Thank you. I believe we've got two choices. One, the incinerator, or two, pay the additional $4 for landfill. Steve, I'm sure you've done the numbers. If we took these 5,000 tons to the landfill, what would it cost us additionally a year to get through the first year of this to see what we can do?
Through the chair, it'd be an extra 50,000 to go to the landfill.
An extra, pardon me?
50,000.
50,000 to go?
50,000. Yep.
Thank you.
Councilman Hammonds.
Thank you, Council President. Through the chair to Mr. Smith, does the budget have the money in there to take it to the landfill, the 50,000, or will we have to adjust the millage?
Through the chair, as council knows, the sanitation budget's really tight. So for the remainder of this year, it would be 18,000 this fiscal year, and then the following fiscal year would be 50,000. So, it's hard to say, but I would say you'd almost need another millage. I'm not saying how much of a millage, but you would need additional monies to support that. But.
All set. Councilman Hersberg.
Thank you. I just, based on a lot of the comments that were said, I think Westland residents really value recycling, and I think it's strong enough that if they know it's going to the landfill for a short period of time, they're still going to separate it, still going to keep recycling until we find a more permanent solution. I don't think incineration is the solution here. I think it's not the environmentally friendly solution, and we should continue to look for other ones. Financially, $80 or something like that, we definitely don't want to get into that type of fees, but $40, it might be a little bit more expensive, but I think the Westland residents value recycling strong enough to maybe pay a little bit extra to do the recycling. So at this point, I stand against it, and I'd like to see our trash go to the landfill temporarily until we can find a better solution.
Councilman Johnson.
Steve, you gave two sets of numbers there, 50,000, but it's 18,000 for the remainder of this year. There, I believe, there's 18,000 in that budget would give us another 9 months to try and figure something out. I would support maybe going to the landfill for the rest of this year and looking at other ways of resolving the issue. But at some point, we can't afford an additional $50,000 every year to go to landfills either. So if we're really, and it sounds like some of the council people are concerned with this, If we go with the landfill for the other 9 months of this year, it's $18,000. That would give us at least an opportunity to look at doing something else. So I would support Peter's concern about landfill for the rest of the year, not permanently. Thank you.
Councilman Londo.
Thanks, President Gobb. I just got a question through the chair. I know we have a one-year contract on the table right now. I believe there is some language to get out of this contract. Is that correct? Or the mayor, I'm sorry, through the chair.
Sure.
Thank you. Well, we knew that because we did this on an emergency situation that we had to get council approval. So basically the way it would work is it would work the same way as our month-to-month contract with the recycling center. If we don't take anything there, they're not going to bill us for anything. So we don't have to, the contract just, if we don't, it's a contract, if we take them stuff, that's what it's going to cost us. So one thing I would tell council is that if we make the decision to take our recyclables to the landfill, then I think it's important that we don't tell people that put anything you want in the recycling container, because we worked really hard to change people's education. So I just don't want to turn those recycling containers into garbage containers, because I think it would have devastating long-term effect on our recycling. So just one thing to keep in mind is that if that's the route we want to go, I think people still need to separate the stuff, so that if we do come up with a different option, we can we'll still have a clean stream of recycling, because that's one part of, even if the tariffs go away, is that the stream is going to have to change. So the more that we pollute that stream, the harder it's going to be for us to create a market for it.
Got one more thing, that's right.
Councilwoman Green. I'll get back to you, Mike.
Yes. I'd also like to state that one point that was not mentioned tonight about this facility, Detroit Renewable Energy, is that within a 1.5-mile radius, there are 13 schools located within 1.5 miles. I just so happened to yesterday had been across the street. There was a construction meeting. I own a construction company. So there was a bid meeting going on in that area. I didn't know where it was. So as I was leaving, I saw the big Detroit Renewable Energy sign. You can look through a fence like a block away, and it's a complete residential community. It's all houses. This is not way off somewhere. As the mayor said, this is right in the middle of the community. So I appreciate the effort or the discussion in terms of trying to save what may be $80 a ton, because we didn't get any verification of that. But the fact of the matter is that I don't believe that we should contribute to the problems in that area. And there has not been enough study done by council to conclude that this is absolutely necessary and reasonable at that point. We had a study session 7 days ago, so I will not support it. Thank you.
Councilman Londo.
Thanks, President Gabao. I agree. I think there needs to be more study, a little more discussion on this. I appreciate all the folks that came out. I appreciate everybody that reached out on Facebook, or I tried to offer answer questions for. Is it an option? Can we table this to a later date, and we can have further discussion and maybe possibly have another study session on this? Is that something we can do? I'll make the motion to table if I can get support.
There's a motion to table this item and support. Give me a chance to acknowledge it, please. Is there any discussion on the?
Tabling, no discussion.
There's no discussion allowed on a motion to table. We'll have a roll call, please.
On the motion to table, Councilwoman Green.
Yes.
Councilman Hammonds. No. Councilman Hart is absent. Councilman Hersberg.
No.
Councilman Johnson.
No.
Councilman Londo.
Yes.
President Godbout.
No.
Motion to table fails.
So we're back to the original motion to approve the contract. Is there any further discussion by the council on this item? Any further discussion? I have a couple of comments in regards to this. As the mayor indicated, keeping our residents recycling is important for our long-term recycling efforts. No one is pleased with the fact that we're in a spot now where we either continue with having our residents sort their items properly and taking them to a facility that's creating, it's at least a waste-to-energy facility instead of a landfill where that material won't break down in any of our lifetimes. And they continue to spot more and more landfills because it's cheap to get rid of the material that way. In our case, because of the contract that we have currently, it's not cheaper to take the material to a landfill. But it still is important to keep our residents in the mode of recycling. We've worked on this for too long and too many years. I was on the recycling committee before we had curbside recycling, going back probably 15, 18 years ago in this city. And we've come a long way. We used to burn all of our trash before we had a recycling program at our own incinerator. So fortunately, we got out of that mode. This is, in my opinion, this is a one-year contract. It's a short-term contract to give us the opportunity to do proper due diligence and figure out what other avenues there are for our recycled material. Is it going to change? Sure. The commodity market's changed it already. We probably aren't going to be able to continue to recycle all of the materials that we currently accept as recycling. But this at least gives us an alternative that's producing energy during this interim period while we sort out and figure out what we're going to do long-term for our recycling. Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Green.
No.
Councilman Hammonds. No. Councilman Hart is absent. Councilman Hurlbert.
No.
Councilman Johnson.
No.
Councilman Londo.
No.
President Godbout.
Yes.
The motion to approve fails. New business, item 2C, adoption of prepared resolution approving the sale of the police cell tower. The mayor and city clerk are authorized to execute the agreements necessary to sell the police cell tower and to transfer the existing leases to SBA and to acquire a site access agreement from SBA, and finally to enter into an easement agreement with SBA.
Motion by Councilman Johnson, supported by Councilman Hersberg. Is there discussion? Councilwoman Green.
Yes, through the chair to Steve Smith in finance. During the study session that we had regarding the cell tower sale, it is being proposed that the tower be sold for $1.4 million. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that is what is in the budget, yes.
Okay, and during the study session, I asked where is the money going to be allocated to after the sale, and you stated that the money has already been utilized in the current budget, the 2018 budget. And so can you provide clarification on how we've already utilized the $1.4 million in our existing fiscal year budget if council is being asked to approve the sale tonight? Thank you.
Through the chair to Councilwoman Green. So the 1.4 million is part of the revenues in the current fiscal year 18-19 budget. So it's not specifically set aside for one particular item in the budget. It's just part of all the revenues that make up the budget. So I don't know if that's a good enough explanation, but that's how it's budgeted in the current budget.
So how are we selling it today if the revenues, the $1.4 million is already in use, essentially, based off of the explanation you gave me. What is the transfer, what are we transferring?
Through the chair. So if the sale goes in for less than the 1.4 million, that's what's in the budget. But as council knows, we do budget amendments first quarter, second quarter, third quarter. What would end up happening is as we do our analysis coming up for the third quarter, that would be part of the third quarter possible budget amendment. So if we did not get the 1.4 million in.
I guess I'm just unclear if we already have the 1.4 million and you stated that we're using it, because I wanted to know where are we going to allocate these funds, with my thought initially to hopefully we can use some towards public safety. But you stated at the study session that the funds are already in use. So what are we selling, or what are we approving if we're already, the $1.4 million is essentially gone? Because it's in our budget. You said it's already been allocated throughout the current year budget. So we're approving a sale for $1.4 million, but there's no money to be transferred.
So through the chair, so the way obviously, and you know budgets, so obviously not everything that's budgeted in the budget comes in as it was budgeted. Some things come in less, some things come in more. So that's where the budget amendments come in at. So if this comes in lower than the 1.4, then we would do, as we do our third quarter analysis of the financial statements, we may bring to council a budget amendment to account for the sale of the tower less than what the budget is.
The mayor wants to speak. I'm fine with that.
Are you done?
Yeah, that's fine.
Councilman Johnson?
I think the easier answer to Councilwoman Green's question is it goes to the general fund. That she's requesting where the money went to. It's the surplus in the general fund, correct?
Yeah, this is a general fund revenue. It's budgeted in the general fund, correct?
And it's part of our surplus.
Yes.
Mayor?
Okay, just a little clarification. So the city put this cell tower out. We did a bid. We put out a bid out for proposals to sell this cell tower. And as part of that process, when the bids came in, the high bidder is the one that we recommended that we sell it to. So we have a purchase agreement with the company to buy the cell tower. The revenue from that sale was put into the budget. It was part of the revenues that we knew that would come in during the budget year 18-19. So they're part of the revenues, just like property taxes and fees and so on and so forth. So now we're to the point where they're ready to close on it, and that's why we're doing this at the council meeting tonight. So the monies, once it comes in, it's not part of the surplus. This was part of the revenue that was part of the balanced budget that council adopted. It went into balancing the budget. It was part of the proposed budget was the sale of this cell tower, just like the sale of the Hawthorne Valley. Those were two assets that the city was going to sell during this budget year. So what we're doing now is this will line us up for closing on the cell tower. Does that help at all?
Councilwoman Green?
Through the chair to the mayor, thank you. As you all know, I'm very good with budgets. So I understand that the difference between the Hawthorne deal is that Councilman Johnson and Councilman Hertzberg wanted to take it off the table because we have not been paid the $500,000. At the study session, I asked Mr. Smith, where are the $1.4 million from this sale? Where is it going to be allocated? Thinking in terms of this is a brand new deal. Just like if we were going to sell City Hall for $20 million, if council approved it, then at the close of that deal, we have $20 million. at the close of this deal, based on what Steve said, we are not getting the 1 point. I asked, where is the money going to be allocated during the study session? And everybody, well, let me be specific. Steve and several others stated that the $1.4 million is already in use in the 2018 budget. So my question, my only concern, or the only thing I wanted to know is, where is the city going to use this money, especially with our budget coming up and becoming due in July? I wanted to know what were the plans for the money, and I was told that the money is already in use. So that is not customary when a sale is done. So I was never given an answer in terms of where that money is going, and it did not register with me until I thought about that answer after looking at this agenda tonight, that this question, we were not told when I asked the question at the study session, we don't know where this money is going. I was told in front of everybody on council that it's already in use. So that was why I wanted additional clarification, because that makes no sense to me from a sales standpoint. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion from the council? Any further discussion? Just a comment, the sale and revenue streams that we discuss during the budget sessions, and this was one of the items that was brought up during our budget session back a year ago when we talked about the 2018-2019 budget, as well as the sale of the Hawthorne Valley property. Those funds were part of our general fund budget. The general fund, we look at the revenues coming in, we divide up the revenues to the various departments over the course of the year, and if there's a shortage or if there's an overage, that's when we get a budget amendment to account for those overages or shortages in a budget. This money was already included in the budget. It's part of the expenditures that we anticipated the closing being during this fiscal year, and it just, is part of the standard budgeting process that we go through every year. So, roll call, please.
Councilwoman Green.
No.
Councilman Hammonds. Yes. Councilman Hart is absent. Councilman Hersberg.
Yes.
Councilman Johnson.
Yes.
Councilman Londo.
Yes.
President Godbout.
Yes.
Motion passes. New business item 2, confirmation of appointment of Mohammed Ayub as planning director for the city of Westland. If confirmed, Mr. Ayub would be appointed at 85% of the grade 2 per the appointed official's pay plan at a starting salary of $82,879.
Motion by Councilman Landau, supported by Councilman Hersberg. Mayor?
Thank you, City Council. Tonight we present you Mo Ayub, who's in the audience here tonight. He is currently a senior planner for the city of Dearborn. His resume was actually part of your packet tonight. Prior to his tenure for the city of Dearborn, he also worked for the Michigan Department of Transportation. He has a master's of urban planning from Wayne State University, and he's got a bachelor of urban studies from Wayne State University as well. He's also a board member of the Michigan Association of Planning. He's here in the audience tonight. Mo, we would like to stand up and be recognized. So just a couple other things. So if Mr. Ayub is confirmed here tonight, he will finish out his time with the city of Dearborn, and his first day with the city of Westland would be March 4th. We're in a little bit of an awkward situation because our current planner, Greg Elliott, is here, and you remember Greg is an employee of McKenna and Associates, and Greg stepped into, we had a huge void when Bruce Thompson unexpectedly retired. Greg's come in a short period of time. He's done a great job, and we appreciate the work that he's done. We have a 30-day out clause with McKenna that we're going to execute beginning of March, and that will allow Greg to transition with Mo throughout the period of March, which will get him through his first planning commission and ZBA meeting and a couple city council meetings. So we think that he's going to be a great addition to our staff. And at the same time, we need to recognize the work that Greg Elliott's done for the city. It's been a pleasure working with him as well. Thank you.
Any discussion from the council? Any discussion? Any dissent? Any dissent? Hearing no dissent, motion carries unanimously. Mo, congratulations.
New business item 3, approval of special land use for a proposed vehicle repair facility, 5950 North Hicks Road, east side of Hicks, south of Webb Drive. Planning Department number 971C. Planning Commission recommends approval as the proposed use meets the special land use standards of the zoning ordinance.
Motion by Councilman Hersberg. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Councilman Landau. Greg?
Thank you, Council President. So this is a site, as was mentioned, at 5950 North Hicks Road. It's on the east side of Hicks Road, just south of Webb Drive. If you can see the orange star up there, that's the site. There's a little closer up view of that. The site is a 1.3 acre site. It's 200 feet of frontage on Hicks Road. It's zoned I-1 Light Industrial District. It's already improved with a 16,000 square foot building, multi-tenant building. The applicant is proposing to lease 4,000 square feet in that building. Is asking for approval to engage in vehicle repairs, which are a special land use in the I-1 district. That's a look at the building looking east. That's the rear of the building with the bay door that he would be utilizing. That's the front of the building. I believe that's the proposed tenant space right there. That is a site plan that has already been approved by council some number of years ago for the construction of the building, and the site continues to be in conformance with that site plan. So the applicant is here tonight. If you happen to have any questions of him, he's indicated to Planning Commission that his intended hours of operation are from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Saturday. Planning Commission recommended approval of this subject to 3 conditions. One, that any vehicles being serviced would be parked behind the building. 2, that no vehicles would be parked outdoors when the business is closed. And 3, that approval is granted for auto repairs only and no vehicles may be sold from the premises. And the applicant has indicated his agreement to all those conditions when he was at Planning Commission. I'm happy to answer any questions that council might have.
So, petitioner present, you want to come forward?
Hello, everybody.
Hi. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
No.
Any discussion from the council?
Smart.
Any discussion? Any dissent? Any dissent? Hearing no dissent, motion carries unanimously. Good luck.
Thank you.
New business item 4, approval of voucher.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Councilman Hersberg. Is there support? Support by Councilman Johnson. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Any dissent? Any dissent? Hearing no dissent, motion carries unanimously. We'll move on to citizens' comments or requests. Citizens will be recognized at the end of the meeting immediately following the agenda item approval of vouchers. Citizens are asked to limit their comments to 3 minutes. All citizens wishing to speak will be heard. Is there anyone on my left? Anyone on my right? Anyone in the audience? Mr. Murphy?
Jim Murphy, Westland. This is a thank you to the fire department. During the past year, my wife, Mary Murphy, had problems walking and fell many times. We called the fire department, the EMS units, and they came immediately each time. And before we had a ramp in our garage, they also lifted her in a wheelchair into the garage so I could take my wife to the doctor. The EMS was very friendly and gave the impression each time that they were happy to help. So I thank you. Also, my wife, Mary Murphy, passed away this last month and was very active for the past 15 or 20 years in the political process. I want to thank the public representatives who paid their respects by attending her wake or funeral. Michael Lando, Saab Garib, Bob Kozowski, David LeBlanc, Glenn Anderson, and Mayor Wild. It was very kind of you and deeply appreciated.
Is there anyone on my right? Anyone on my left? Yes.
Again, Mr. Mayor, Council, Fire and Police, thank you. I just want to say thank you all for not approving the incinerator on item H. I think it was a bad idea. I know we're in a tough situation. One thing I do have a problem with, and I actually want to give a lot of credit to Council President Godbout. He had mentioned that the recycling was going to be an issue many months ago. I believe it was a meeting in October. He was on top of that issue. I know he does work in the industry, and he does deserve credit because he did make this council aware that this was going to be a problem on the horizon. We've got to look into this issue. I believe we said it would be $18,000 for the rest of this year to take it to the landfill and $50 more for a year. I would just ask, is a person's life. All the people that we've heard here tonight from the city of Detroit that have said, you know, we have asthma throughout our community, the rate of asthma is far higher, the pollution. I mean, nobody's life is worth $50,000, especially for a city of 85,000. I mean, I get that it's more money, but I think the citizens, almost to a person, would agree that human lives are worth more than that. And I don't want to single out anybody specifically here, but there was, especially in the last couple elections, there was a lot of talk of decorum in here, and I think it has gotten better. But again, I'm not going to mention any names. There was eye rolling up here when other council members were speaking. I think it was disrespectful. I'm not going to put anybody out there because I'm sure it won't be on camera and somebody will say that I'm trying to make a political attack on them. But just realize that when one of your colleagues is speaking up there, that they deserve the same respect that you would want for yourself. So I hope we can do that, and I wish you all a good night. Thank you.
One on my right. One on my left? Yes.
Good evening again, Mike McDermott, 652 Forest Street. So I too want to commend the council on item H. I know this wasn't an easy decision. We know that through the tariffs and the trade wars, China is not buying our recyclables. That was already something that was starting prior to what's been going on at the federal level with our economic policy. And it's not an easy decision, and it really, in a lot of ways, is a lose-lose. Certainly, we know that incinerating trash is not recycling, and we have to be cognizant of the residents who live in the community so that we're not dumping our problem onto somebody else. And certainly, taking garbage to a landfill is not recycling either, and is not always the most cost-efficient, given the contract that we have currently with Waste Management, not the most cost-effective way that we can do this. But I do think, even though it was a lose-lose situation, and there's no true good outcome, I am happy to see that this did not pass tonight because the safety of people and being environmentally conscious for the people who breathe that air, who live around that facility, is paramount and is more than any dollar and cents. So thank you for taking the initiative and voting it down. Again, a very hard decision, but thank you for making the right decision tonight.
What, am I right? Yes, ma'am.
Hello. Thank you all for your decision for my community. I'm going to be bringing that back to them, and they're already really happy about it. I did, for those that are still uncertain as to why incineration is really bad, 30% of the total waste that goes in there is landfilled. So you're still landfilling 30% of whatever goes into an incinerator in the form of toxic ash that ends up through rainwater poisoning our water systems. And that doesn't happen when you just put the plastic into the landfill, because it takes that chemical reaction of burning to create that change. So I just want you to be very aware of that. Also, the facility is old. It was only built to run for 30 years, and it was built in 1986. No matter what they told you, it's not up to date. And the most up-to-date facilities that are being built in the Netherlands are still way past their emission violations, and they haven't figured out how to build them correctly. So it is an old system. It's an ancient system. We're going to be moving past it, especially within the next few years when we have to change a lot more than just where we put our trash. So I really appreciate all of your efforts tonight to make a better decision for our community, because you were you showed that. Thank you. I do want to give you all our report that comes from the Great Lakes Environmental Law Center, and also our fact sheet. And if there's any way and anything else you need to reach out to us for, we'll be there to help you figure out a better solution for your recycling. Thank you.
One on my left? Yes, sir.
This is the first time I'm coming up here to speak. Mr. Galbo, it's appalling, your body language. As a representative of this city, when other people speak, the way your body language is appalling. You should be ashamed of yourself. You represent this city, so you should show respect when people are speaking. Shame on you. You should resign your position if you're not going to show respect to people.
One on my right. Anyone on my left? Ray?
I mean, yeah, citizens do have comments to make, and, you know, I sit back and I watch too, you know. You don't think that people are watching, but they are. And respect goes a long ways. To give respect, you got to get respect. And, you know, we're not going to always agree on things, but that's life. And everyone has entitled to their opinion. But one thing as a good note tonight was, I'm glad I was here when Mike Little got promoted as I believe as a sergeant. I was really happy about that. And the other one, detective, I was kind of shocked that he was retiring. I liked them both. And I'm looking forward, and I know Mike will do a really good job. Westland Police does, they do a really good job, and sometimes they do get negatives. But I'm here to give them some positive, and I think they're doing good. You know, you hear things, I read things on Facebook, they are doing wonderful. I support the police department, not this Westland. Anytime I see a police department doing a good job, a good duty for somebody, I put it out there. You know what? They're out there to save lives. It's like the fire department. They got a job to do too. And sometimes you got to just tell them something. It can't be everywhere. But anyway, I also, you know, I've been speaking at the Youth Group Assistance Program, and my heart goes out for these kids. And I'll tell you something, I am really looking forward to getting an award the 28th of February. Thank you.
Anyone on my right? Anyone on my left? Anyone else in the audience? We'll close citizens' comments and move on to comments from the administration. Mayor?
Nothing else tonight, Council President.
Anything from the city attorney's office?
Nothing from the city attorney's office, Council President.
Begin council comments with Councilwoman Green.
Thank you, Council President. I'd like to start tonight by thanking Reester Everett, Roy Wilson, and Clarence Love for leading the Pledge of Allegiance tonight. I'd also like to once again say congratulations to the promotion of our officers to sergeants, Sergeant Little and Sergeant Sleep, and also Mr. Joe Bobby, who retired. Thank you so much for your service, and to the newly promoted officers, I look forward to working with you in the future. I'd also like to thank Chief Jedrzusik for providing insight to the community as to the reason for the consolidation. There are hard decisions that we have to make at times on council, and one of the things that I pride myself on is that I will not vote against our residents under any circumstance, but that is not to say that a decision that we have to make may not impact you in a way that you don't necessarily agree with. So I appreciate you, Chief, taking time to explain and give background as to the reasoning for that recommendation to consolidate with Dearborn. I'd also like to congratulate Mr. Ayob on his appointment to the Planning Department. I also wanted to thank City Council for voting against the recycling contract. I think as council members, it's our obligation to make sure that we have as much research and information as possible when our decisions affect lives in more ways than one. So I'm very pleased about that, and I look forward to working collectively to come up with a solution that not only benefits our city, but also does not contribute to health and safety issues of our neighbors. I'd like to thank the DPS department for the repair that they did. There was a water main break in the city of Westland, and there were several crews that came out on President's Day in the freezing cold, and that was the day that they were supposed to have a free day. And they reported and took time away from their families, and they worked pretty late into the midnight hour getting that repair done. So I just want to say thank you for that. It is noticed and appreciated by the community. I'd like to thank the Detroit residents who took their time to come and speak about your concerns. Thank you for sharing them with us, and we look forward to hearing from you in the future. Residents are the reason why we all sit up here, and it is important whether you are residents of Westland or the actions of Westland impact your community that we first listen before we act. So thank you for coming out tonight. I'd like to finally thank Steve for your comment regarding the obvious what I would say, and consistent mannerisms of our council president. I have experienced that since joining council, and it has not let up at all. Many of you might have noticed me tapping the microphone before I speak. I've started doing that at the last few meetings. It's because I realized after watching a council meeting that during my entire closing comment, my microphone was not on, while the council president controls the microphones. And not only that, there's been issues with him trying to prevent me from talking during meetings, sending emails, and none of these requests are documented by policy. And that is not a tenth of what I have experienced. And many of the people I see here with on council are aware, the city attorney is aware, the mayor is aware. But one thing about me is I knew that this was not going to be easy when I came here, but God put me here to stand up, and so did the residents of Westland, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. So I appreciate your support and for acknowledging that. I get feedback like that all the time from residents who come to these meetings and witnessed the eye rolling and the different mannerisms. So thank you for bringing light to it, because you are definitely not the only one. And frankly, it is exhausting to deal with on a regular basis. So thank you.
You're welcome. We support
Thank you.
Councilman Hammonds.
Thank you, Council President. I want to start off by congratulating Mr. Ayub on becoming the planning director. Look forward to working with you. And I want to say thank you to all the residents that came out tonight and spoke, and those that are from the Detroit area that came out also. Thank you. Thank you for coming out and speaking your mind. That's it for me tonight. Thank you.
Councilman Johnson.
Nothing more, thanks.
Councilman Landau.
Putting the pressure on, I only got like 3 things. I also want to start off by congratulating Sergeant Michael Little and newly Sergeant Cameron Sleep, and also thank Sergeant Joe Bobby for his dedicated service to the community, and also K-9 Hemi with Sergeant Little getting his promotion tonight. We had to retire one of our K-9 dogs, so Hemi did about 5 or 6 years of dedicated service as well, so enjoy your retirement, Hemi. I also want to welcome Mike Ayub to the city. Got your resume here. I love everything about it except for that Spartan logo. That's the Michigan guy in me, but we appreciate you coming forward, and looking forward to working with you. I actually called around on you and had a lot of good things, heard a lot of good things about you, so Dearborn's been a thriving community, and I'm hoping you can bring some of those ideas and some of your skill set to Westland. Then I also want to thank President Godbout for his moment of silence for Representative Dingle. Just one brief thing I just found out, and it doesn't have to do with John Dingle, but just the Dingle family in general. Back in 2003, my mother was battling cancer and unfortunately lost her life. And I guess I just found this out the other day, so I'm bringing it up. And Mrs. Dingle worked with my mother, and she helped her pay for her wig when she didn't have any hair. She helped her take, cancer benefits and things of that nature. And it just brought tears to my eyes the other day finding that out. Just by hearing about the passing of John Dingle, someone reached out and told me about that. So rest in peace to John Dingle. And again, thank you for the moment of silence tonight. That's it.
Councilman Hersberg.
Nothing further tonight, just quick congratulations to Mo Ayub. Look forward to meeting and talking with you.
I'd like to begin by thanking Mrs. Everett, Mr. Wilson, and Mr. Love for leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance this evening. I too would like to congratulate Mo on his appointment as our new city planner. I've had the pleasure to meet Mo a few times over the past year. He brings with him experience from a larger community, and his knowledge and leadership skills, as demonstrated by his recent election to the board of the Michigan Association of Planning, shows his work ethic. And Mo will be another sharp young professional added to our staff, and is, in my opinion, a great choice as the planner for the city of Westland now and hopefully for years to come. I've inquired with our city attorney's office earlier this week on the status of various ordinance changes and additions that seem to have been in idle mode. I've been assured by the city attorney's office that they're being addressed, and we should start seeing some of them moving forward in the next few meetings. So some of the things that we started working on last year are finally going to be coming forward. Some, I believe, at the next meeting, and then in successive meetings moving forward. So with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.